Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back into the podcast. We have Brandon Harris here from Playmaker and social media legend, OG in the sports and basketball space on social media. Thanks so much for doing this, man.
It's an honor. I think right back at you as far as I think I've seen you basically the entire time I've been doing this since you were like what a 15-year-old kid, maybe younger. So
Probably.
um, definitely a legend. I've had people talk about you like you're the Mozart of social media and basketball and sports so definitely an honor, definitely mutual respect, and very excited to hop on with you.
That's hilarious. Thank you. Um, First thing I want to talk about. So when did you get into the social basketball space and what sort of uh, was the reason why? Did you see it as just something that you could have fun with? Did you see like some future opportunities there? What was it that brought you in?
Yeah, I mean, zooming way back out, I basically, probably like you, wanted to play in the NBA, all of that, was obsessed with basketball was my entire life. Didn't make it very far in actual playing, so kind of wanted to stick close to the space if I could, and training and then marketing basketball apparel and then a bunch of other things. And in marketing basketball apparel, I was like working with early Facebook pages, like one of them was Basketball Above All at the time, where we promote our t-shirts and our offerings on that platform and other platforms. And then kind of early days of Instagram when there was I'm trying to remember the name. I think it's Hoop Flix or something, but there was I think Nasty Dunks and Dunk and some of the OGs back then, and it was
Yep.
just photos. And so I was very early on like the buying side. House of Highlights is another one we used to buy posts from almost every day. So
Well, it was
um,
like what, $100 per for like a 24-hour post or something like that.
for him, it was 110 an hour, and that was pricey, but it was
Oh,
well worth
wow.
it. His engagement was insane. So, but yeah, that was it was definitely like seeing the other side and getting jealous and being like, well, that's awesome that you guys have this platform. You're making great money, high margin money. You're doing what you love. You're creating content all day. This is sick. So I want to be on the other side.
That's awesome. Yeah, that was a crazy world. I was a little bit late to, I mean, late in, in retrospect because I joined like around the time that videos were added. That must have been what, like 2016 or so,
Yeah.
roughly. But I've heard the legendary stories about how you could buy like $100, ad for an hour, 2 hours, and you would literally convert like 10 to 20,000 followers from that single post. I mean, this is a totally different world, but pretty
Totally.
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be 50 times as easy to gain on, especially on Instagram. It was like people were just grinding all day, buying posts, share for share all day, literally gaining thousands and thousands of followers a day. So can't really do that as effectively now, for sure.
But you know what's interesting? Because now, as you know, the opportunity is so much greater because all of the biggest brands in the world now value social, whereas back then that didn't exist, and that's why it was so cheap because nobody saw it as legitimate or valuable. So that's why you could get $100 an hour post, and now you've Fortune 500 brands competing for those same ad spots. And good luck to the little guy who's trying to. I feel terrible, but it's just, on one hand, it's impossible to do it the way it was done. But on the other hand, it's never been easier if you are a very specific type of content creator or media brand in certain formats. Just, I mean, Instagram Reels just totally flipped Instagram on its head, short form video across all platforms. But uh, yeah, it's been fun. So you've been doing this now for almost a decade or so.
Man, I don't know. It's hard to keep track of the years, but probably at least a decade. And yeah, I don't know, man. It's one of those things. I don't know how much longer I can be doing this because it's just how many posts can you make about basketball and let me ask you, Buster, are you uh are you still as passionate about basketball as you were when you started your pages?
So I'll give you the fully honest answer, which is uh, I was the only person running everything for the first 5 or so years. And then I hated it. I didn't like it anymore. I just wanted, to stop. So that's when I started building out my team. And then I got super back into it. Being a Knicks fan, going to a lot more games than I was when I was even, running hoops day to day. And this is true for anything, right? Like I hear all these examples all the time about like travel vloggers. These are people who love to travel. And then it becomes their business and they don't like it anymore. It
Right.
ruins it. The second you make money from something, it is no longer a passion. It is a business. And it doesn't mean you don't like your business, but it is no longer like a hobby or a passion when you start making money from it. So it ebbs and flows depending on how active I am on the business side compared to on the fan side. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's just how it is. What about for you?
Yeah, no, it's like I start to crave like deeper, conversations and things. And I think in line with like what you were talking about earlier, like the quality over quantity, like the world has just shifted in terms of if you make an amazing video, an amazing reel, that's going to be great. It used to be the world rewarded you for posting 1,000 things, and it didn't really matter how good each thing was. And I think that's where my head is with all this sports and basketball. It's like I'd like to see a lot less of it, but I would like for what I see to be special and meaningful and like maybe transcend this just like stats and hot takes, And so I think that's been a change for me because I used to be, loving trolls and memes and things like that. And I think now I'm just kind of overwhelmed with I've been inundated with so much surface level
Yeah.
junk.
Yeah, it's funny, like we probably see more than 1,000 posts every day across social. And if you asked me like what post did I see yesterday, I probably couldn't tell you.
Right.
I mean, maybe I could give you like one example that I shared with a couple of people or something, but other than that, it's all pretty terrible. So that should just say that there's great opportunity for people who are really good at something specific and niche and there's strong value adds. You, though, are one of the biggest success stories from taking Instagram pages and turning it into a real company that you have sold and continue to work on.
Yeah.
And you have all these podcasts, including one with the Knicks, with Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson, which I love. Fantastic podcast. If anybody doesn't
Awesome.
listen, those guys are the best. We're gonna win a title. But what was the point, I guess, that you realized you could turn it into a real business with lots of people involved?
I think for me, that was always the goal, and I think that's served me well with all of this. Is just like it was never like I want to stick to this course or I have a plan or whatever. It's like I need to grow this business. I need to evolve with like the industry. I'm very, very, very competitive, and initially that was kind of toxic. Like I'd look over at people like you and others in the space. I'd be like, damn, he's like his engagement is so amazing, or his whatever is I love this content format or whatever. But I think just the mentality was like, I have to keep evolving. I have to grow this brand. It can't just be, originally one of my first pages was Hoops Vines. And I was like embarrassed to talk about it because like, that's not a cool name. The logo was a stupid little vine icon. And then it just was like uh, I would look at myself and say, you can do better than this every day. And I would just try to be better, learn new tricks, learn new platforms, make new partnerships, like constantly evolve and not kind of stick to what I knew best, which was at the time, you know, the spammy graphic, share for share stuff.
Totally. That was, I mean, I look so fondly on that era though. Like those were good times.
I
But
agree.
yes, everybody grows up and eventually uh what has been really interesting though is everyone like you're an OG, obviously someone like Omar is an OG. You've got all these OGs in the space. Everyone uh has pretty much created a fantastic company, but in so many different ways, right? Like you went the route of full media, owning podcast, intellectual property. I went the agency route where we help tons of brands in lots of different areas with social and digital and collectibles. Omar now runs social for like Disney. I mean, it's incredible. Everybody's found their own way, but I think the lesson there is just we all started out doing the spammy stuff that we were pretty embarrassed about. I mean, I
Yeah.
started writing about fantasy basketball on Facebook, and I'm dyslexic. So if you were to go back and find those, it's probably the ugliest thing you've ever seen. But the point is you just put yourself out there. Um, when what was the sort of thing that made you realize that podcasts were going to be a worthwhile investment and strategy for Playmaker?
I think for me, it was like I have a platform, and right now I don't fill it with an quality, right? I don't have something that's on there that excites sponsors, partners, fans, even, right? And when I looked at the platform and what people really liked and wanted, and I think it ultimately comes down to stuff with the athletes that they love the most. And I think um, if I had to go back and I say, hey, if I could just have a 40 episodes or 45 hours of like content of Shaq's takes and stories and whatever to pump it on my feed and own it, like, is that the best possible partner and piece of content I could ever have? Like, I think the answer is probably yes. So I think for
Yeah,
me, it was like, what is the best thing I could fill these distribution channels with? And to me, that was really authentic, entertaining, engaging podcast with the best personality. Not necessarily the best players or whatever, but like the best personalities, the most entertaining personalities, the people with the most to say. Um, and so that was the vision initially. And at first we were aiming a lot lower. I won't like name drop people because that's kind of an insult relative to Shaq, but it's like ended up getting Shaq, ended up kind of like sticking with the strategy of like best of the best. And like there's a lot of shows we don't do, a lot of shows we've turned down. There's a lot of shows I've tried to push through that I can't necessarily get the full team bought into, but we're like trying to get the best possible personalities in every category, in every region, in every sport.
makes sense. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, best of the best will always outperform the rest. That's as the saying goes. Um, Yeah, I mean, the Roommates show especially has just been such a phenomenal success. Um, if you were, you mentioned these distribution channels like Playmaker and the other channels that Playmaker owns. If you were, coming into the space totally fresh today, is the route that you have gone the same one that you would do now? You would go into trying to own, the intellectual property route with big names. Is that just how you look at the next 5 years of social as well? Is basically what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think I'd still go down this path. I think I'd maybe de-emphasize the channels. I think like there's a question of like buying or renting almost, right? Or like growing or renting. And I think there's still you could still execute a lot of what we execute if you have like partnerships with Hoops Nation and partnerships with a bunch of different networks and that makes sense. So you can get the clips and the footage and the shows in front of the right audiences. I think it can still be done without the platforms, but I think it gives us a huge advantage in terms of cost and speed and ease. But yeah, definitely as far as like the path, like I think this is going to only get bigger and bigger, and I think people are going to continue to want to get more segmented content. Like they don't like a Stephen A. take versus a take from your own like the mouths of the of your two favorite Knicks players or whatever. It's like you'll value Josh Hart and Jalen Brunson's take 10 times out of 10 times over like a general kind of personality. So I think to me, you can continue to develop those things, the relationship, like bigger events, bigger live shows, like spin-off series. There's just so much that's still untapped beneath the surface. So I think this is definitely the path. I think you can still go down this path without the advantages that we have, but I think it does give us a leg up in many cases.
Well, if you did it without owning the platforms, there would be so much risk involved, because you would be subject to ad market conditions. Let's say you were an independent and Amazon, like they just did, came in and basically stole the Travis Kelce show. You know, if they did the same thing for all of your distribution, which they totally could, they could sign exclusive deals in one day with every major social media platform,
Right.
except yours because you own it.
Right.
So that, the risk is significantly reduced there, which I personally, as someone who, hates risk, I love that. I think it's a phenomenal strategy.
That's a
Um,
great point.
and that's how I feel even with like some of the companies we work with in sports, just owning properties ourselves is so beneficial uh from a distribution standpoint, again, because the risk is just reduced, and you can guarantee things that other people can't, or other people shouldn't. There are lots of people who will guarantee numbers and metrics, but they're doing that off of the backs of other accounts that they don't own. Whereas you can guarantee, numbers and results off of the backs of things that you do own. So feels a little bit more appropriate.
Totally,
Um,
and it's more cost efficient, and you touched on kind of the Amazon situation with the Kelseys. I think that's always going to happen, right? There's always going to be bigger companies out there, and especially as you're more and more successful, there will be outside bids and things like that, and you're not going to win every bidding war, right? But I think as you do get into the bidding wars, having a proven track record and having the distribution are like two areas where you can kind of stand out, as long as you're willing to match the finances of the competing offers.
totally. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people talk about, you know, podcasting in the sense of, I think there's 600,000 active podcasts and only, like 0.1% of them make any money. All the others are losing. So, but the top 0.1% are amazing businesses, case in point by all the deals people see in media and news. So it's so great that you're going that route of having, only the biggest and best, because I don't think the little guys would be profitable. I think they would probably lose money.
I think you're totally right. I think it's only going to continue to get worse, right? Like you see a new podcast launched every couple days, even with big names. Not all of those will be successful, and uh, very hard to retain viewership and excitement. Especially as there are more and more options, and as people grow and change as individuals, right? Like what if you liked Shaq a year ago, it's not necessarily true that you'll want to watch Shaq, now today. So I think a lot of competition, got to continue to evolve, and yeah, you like you said, I think very key that you kind of continue to focus on quality and in a time where everyone is like a gold rush and the only the strong will survive. I think.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you're scrolling social, you're like, wow, everybody's content is so great. This is so good. But then I say to you, like, what post did you see yesterday? And you just like can't think of anything. Clearly, there's not enough quality if that's the answer. I think that's something that YouTube has just nailed. I remember every YouTube video I watched yesterday. I watched this interview with Jeff Bezos walking around the Blue Origin headquarters. I watched another, podcast, and it's just not the same as on social. One thing I think is underrated, though, I'll say this: back in the day, like when you watch like old Michael Jordan interviews, those were all one-off interviews. They weren't it's not a podcast. It's a one-off interview with a big name. I think 99.9% of podcasts would be better off becoming a one-off interview person and monetizing those on a one-off basis than putting the spend and having fluff episodes to keep up their consistency on podcast. What do you what do you think about that idea?
I love that, and I think I mostly agree, and I think there's pros and cons. Like I think the big pro of having consistency and having a community is like and I'll use roommates as an example. The community is insane. Like the city of New York, the Knicks, everybody's so behind every social post and every piece of content is waiting every Thursday for that episode to drop and all of that. And I think they're if you're just doing one-offs and there's no consistency, there's not really a substitute for that in terms of like people won't be waiting, people won't be excited.
True.
You can still do a nice marketing build up and everything and still be successful, but there's just not the same kind of built-in community there. But I think it is like you said, like it can be successful first of all. Does get brands maybe to move and be more excited because there's scarcity. But it is like there's just like obviously it lowers your ceiling, but again, going back to like the live shows and events and the layering that you can do with podcasts, like that's basically what a live show is what you're describing is like we're gonna get the biggest possible guests for this market and we're gonna sell tickets, we're gonna sell like special sponsorships on site, we're gonna sell the digital sponsorships, and it is like a live show might make more money than like 10, 15, 20 regular episodes, right? So I think there
Totally.
is definitely something to be said for going big.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to like self-honesty too. Like if you think you're gonna be in the top 0.1% or not, like roommates top 0.1%, you know? But if you're gonna be bottom 80% of bottom 95% of podcasts, you know, I think there's an interesting debate there. How do you feel about the total landscape of social right now? Everything has gone totally short form video. There's probably 10 times as many creators today as there were just 5 years ago in 2019.
Yeah.
Uh, how do you feel about the landscape of things and how to stand out now as someone who maybe isn't you know, big name celebrity?
Yeah, I think like spend it used to be like go out and post and go crazy, like be aggressive, and now it's like be very thoughtful and like really differentiate yourself, really research who you want to be your base, what do they consume, what is working on each platform, and different platforms are all different or differentiated a good bit more than I think they used to be. And so I think there's like a lot more thought going into work with someone like Buster who can help develop your content strategy for you. But I think it's like now it's a quality thing. It's a who can you get in your content with you. It's a what can you like answer for people that hasn't been answered 1,000 million times. And I think it's just quality over quantity, same thing as what we said before. And even then, with great quality, it still can flop because there's a lot of randomness in each platform now.
Totally. And the other thing I'd say, you know, I don't think money should be anyone's reason for doing it, but if it's not a byproduct, it's probably not working. So I would say the people who I've seen be the most successful from a financial side on social are the people who are niching down and building businesses around their niches. Like the guy who makes gardening content and then starts a company that's selling seeds, and I was doing, 20-30 million dollars a year. The guy who's I love this guy. His name's Luke's Goldies, and he sells goldfish food. He makes goldfish content. He's got 10 million followers making content about goldfish. And he sells goldfish food. He sells live goldfish. He sells like care packages, like how to take care of your goldfish. And then he makes money from content. This guy's got an incredible business and he's
Yeah,
world renowned in the goldfish industry. I want to be the goldfish guy. It's like I want to be the goldfish guy. I don't want to be Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is Mr. Beast. And you're not Mr. Beast. I think
no
everyone
means.
thinks they can be, but you know, having that little tiny sliver of the internet, having your own little tiny sliver of the internet is probably worth a couple $100 million. And I don't
Yeah,
think people think about it in that same way. And the more differentiated, the more unique it is, the easier it probably is, even as something as weird as goldfish.
totally agree. And I think you touched on like keywords that I totally agree with, which is differentiated, unique. I think another word is authenticity. And I think people are more and more into weird, authentic, like, they want to find a piece of themselves in a creator or whatever, identify a passion that they have in another and things like that. So I think that's great advice that you've given. And I think it applies for podcasting and really anything content creation wise. Like if you're not passionate about it, don't do it yet. Like it's just gonna be like the amount of work and time and resilience that it requires is like you got to be all in, or I think like outsource it or whatever, because I think to kind of moonlight in part time and think you can make a video here and there. And I think a lot of people don't realize the investment that is required to be great in that area, and especially in podcasts. Like if you're not going to really, really fully commit to it, it is first of all going to be exhausting for you, and second of all, not going to be successful. So I think um, you touched on how to be successful. I think I touched on how not to be successful. So I
I
think,
think I think that's right. It's funny. It's one of the reasons why we don't work with individuals and personal brands. Some people just don't have it in them. And the difference between personal brands and brands is brands, you can do it for them.
oh,
You don't need the face on it, but personal brand, you have to actually, want to invest a lot of your life, really. I don't want to like undersell. You have to be willing to invest your life into being successful at that or anything else.
yeah.
Um, I'd love to ask you what are your goals now? Like what are you excited about? What do you get fired up about? What do you want to do?
I just love building and creating. And I think what's been really cool is since the acquisition, they've put me in a role where I'm developing the shows and like basically leading all the creative side of things. And it's been exciting for me and reinvigorating in many ways. And so for me, continuing to build, continuing to be creative, continuing to, learn and evolve as a human being, like personally, professionally, in every way. Like I think for me, what the most frustrating thing is in life and in corporate environments is like you don't get to move at the speed that you can, and you don't get to push quite as much as you can in a startup world. And so for me, just continuing to evolve, think bigger, learn, get better. And like, I don't feel like, I think a lot of people feel like they're entitled to bigger and they're entitled to, but you have to evolve to be worthy of that. You have to understand that bigger is harder, is going to require more from you skills wise. It's going to require more sacrifice from you skills wise. And I think um, that's been the biggest learning experience here as part of a very large corporation. It's just, it is, people really love to simplify it in content and hustle culture and things like that. But it is a nightmare logistically to do anything that big. It doesn't mean you can't do it, but just know like, it's the argument of it's just as easy to do something that's 10x bigger or whatever, like they like to say. It's just not. It's just frankly not. And you have to be a sharper, hungrier person to take on something that ambitious. So that to me has been like training my mind, getting in the right headspace to think bigger. And I think like I'm still thinking through what that is, but I know for me, um, just continue to evolve is really my priority.
I love that. I mean, clearly you evolved to get to this point. What were sort of the biggest things that, allowed you to go from, a couple employees to a lot more than a couple?
Yeah, I think great example. Like you think you get into the space and you think you're crushing in an area, and then you start hiring, right? And then you learn that's a whole new thing. That's a whole discipline, it's a whole specialty, and you fail a lot and you learn through failure, right? I think that's the advantage that people like you and me have had, is that we've been free to go and fail in the 50 different directions, and we've gained knowledge in 50 different directions versus like here's what you do every day in your corporate job. And you don't get to necessarily play in these different sandboxes. And I think that's been the advantage for me, is like you said, I've been doing this forever. Like I've been doing this forever and I've failed in so many different areas. And so like now I feel like I really understand hiring and how to interview people and how to vet people and who's going to be successful and if experience is really applicable to what I'm doing. And I've learned a lot about content. I've learned a lot about each social platform. I've learned a lot about motivating team and compensation structures and deal structures generally, and the M&A process and raising money. And so it's all been very hard earned knowledge. And so, but it's come through an unthinkable amount of mistakes and debt and different things along the way. And so, um, I do have some risk tolerance left, and that's great. But I think like you start getting a little more efficient in time, and mistakes become smaller. And so that is really just the key. Is just continuing to solve problems from my perspective.
Totally. What have been some of the things you've learned on motivation of team side?
I think you just really need to learn people and like actually listen to them and care deeply about them. And I think that really drives it all. I think like in a using a corporate environment as an example, like there are some people who are very motivated by titles. There are some people who are very motivated by learning things and evolving and growth. And you have to first of all, like you have to go to bat for people sometimes. You have to be very direct with people sometimes. You have to like set expectations appropriately up front. So you're not saying, hey, you're going to be the CEO in 9 months, and then 9 months comes and they're deeply frustrated and they hate themselves. So um, it's like a lot of it is just trust. Like people know if I say something, I mean it, and I'm going to fight for it. And so sometimes I got to give them some love. Sometimes I got to give them some bad news and sandwich it in with some compliments or whatever. But I think it's everyone's a little bit different. You get to really know people, and then you show that you care and you stick to what you say. And I think people really appreciate that. And I've developed, a very loyal team, and uh, it's been it's been a great learning experience. These are relationships I'll keep the rest of my life.
I love it. I love it. Where do you think sort of like directionally the last 4 years have pretty much been all encompassed by short form video. Every platform's competing with one another. Instagram's still becoming more like TikTok. TikTok's trying to become more like Instagram. They're both slowly merging. It's so funny. Like Instagram is about to launch their trials for Reels to non-followers, and TikTok just launched the ability to post photos. They're diverging. Um, where do you sort of see things going? And if you had to sort of pick a medium today, if you were a creator starting out, what medium would you pick, and what platform would you prioritize?
I would prioritize long form on YouTube personally, and I think obviously all platforms are now saturated. Like that's just the world we live in. There's not like one where I can say there's a huge hole or opportunity there. So I'm prioritizing where I think the greatest upside is, where I think the greatest engagement is, where I think the strongest communities are, and I think if you are on YouTube and you're creating great long form, it also lends itself well to short form. And sometimes you can clip the long form into short form immediately, and there's a nice like efficiency there. But I think for me, like that's the greatest upside. If you can master that, if you can really build a subscriber base and build that muscle for yourself, like the revenue is best there, or in my opinion, the stability of the platform is there, and you just really can connect with people in every niche. So that's my point of view. What do you think?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, 100%. It's like the old saying, like when you're going out in the winter, it's better to wear too many layers than too few, because you can always take layers off, but you can't put layers on that you don't have. It would be the same thing for, it's a lot easier to turn a long clip into a short clip than a short clip into a long clip.
That's a great analogy.
It's it's a very specific, unique skill. Not that many people can be entertaining on camera for 10, 15, 20 minutes. That's a very rare person. But uh if that's you, whew, you gotta go in there, because if you can become successful again in a niche category with a you know big enough total addressable market, and if you get lucky and you're in one of those niches that have good CPMs too, I mean, you're gonna have a phenomenal business without doing just about anything else. Uh, and that's a pretty sweet spot to be in, because these days, and I'd love to touch on this too. Like, there are so many creators who have like 1 million followers, 2 million followers on like TikTok, Instagram, even other platforms too, and they make no money. Like, literally make no money. And that is a position that I hope no one listening to this will put themselves in. And we could talk a little bit about like ways to avoid that, but What do you think? I mean, you've seen these people and these accounts. Like, where do you think they went wrong? Because they have the followings, but there's no business.
Yeah, I think they have like a top of funnel, and I think they need to figure out how to monetize it. And I think there's a lot of ways to do it. And I think if you have a great community, often you can move them from platform to platform and start new things. And if your community is not great, like just because you have a lot of followers doesn't mean you have a great community, as you and I are keenly aware.
Yep.
And have seen a lot of. And I think that really is what it comes down to is like, do you have the strategy, the business strategy behind your project, and do you have a real community? Because if you're not building a real engaged community, and that's another thing, Buster, I will give you your flowers on, is early on you were always responding to comments and like engaging with people, and like you were one of the most community one-on-one conversation oriented people in the space early on. And I think
Thanks, man.
um, you saw that community was kind of everything from the beginning, because it's just, if not, it's kind of empty views. And then you're relying on the platforms. And I think Instagram has told me directly that the platform works and they don't plan on increasing monetization. They've told me that a few times. They don't care too much. And like I
Yeah,
initially was
why
like,
why would they? I mean, if they're
because it
making
works,
money,
right? I get
yeah.
it. So it's just charity at that point for them. And I think TikTok has creative programs and things, but like, I don't know, not huge amount of money for most people. And I think so you just got to figure out, okay, are you monetizing platforms? If so, go to like push your people over to YouTube or Snap or wherever they're paying for these views, or find a great partner or sponsor strategy, or develop a website, or develop an email newsletter or whatever to monetize them, and just get them off of those platforms if you can. But yeah, that's my.
Yeah. I mean, I love that you were just like spitting them out because there really are like 20 or 30 ways that you can do it. You just have to pick, whatever sort of bet. You could build a private paid community. You can do anything, there's a million different ways to do it, but the easiest would for sure be just sending people to YouTube and just building a community on another platform that's going to compensate you better. I will say though, TikTok so TikTok Creator Fund is significantly better than YouTube Shorts. Like 10 times or more better than YouTube Shorts monetization. I remember there was like I'll just give an example because I just do this stuff for fun. Uh when there was like a week, I don't know, last summer where I was just making lots of videos about the Titanic submersible because I love the Titanic and I'm interested in that sort of stuff. So I was just spitting out videos and then they started to pick up. They were doing, every single video is doing 1 million views. And to be monetized on TikTok, you only need it to be 1 minute and 1 second long. So if it's 1 minute and 1 second long and you're getting $1, $2 CPMs and your videos are getting millions of views and you're doing multiple videos a day, I mean, you can make like 10 grand a day from just being like trending. But the hard part about TikTok is that your followers are meaningless and you're basically you have to be like the hottest thing at that moment and those moments just go by fast. Like you're getting 1 million views a day one day and then you're getting 4,000 views the next day. That's just how
Yeah.
TikTok is as a platform. So you have to so monetization isn't terrible, but it's definitely not consistent.
Yeah, and it's just the struggle with me for TikTok has always been, don't know how to get people off that platform to anywhere else. And also, um, in general, like hard to we touched on niching down. Very hard to niche down on a platform that's for you, it's worldwide, your audience is 40% US, it's, or 50% or whatever it is, and just such a diverse platform, which is great in a lot of ways, and like especially driving top line views. But it's like, how do you really, really build a community, and how do you leverage that community elsewhere? I think it's kind of like, it's tough there. But yes, from a viewership perspective on shorts, it's pretty tough to beat.
Yeah, it's tricky. They've basically removed all of the features that build community. TikTok. There aren't like the story feature isn't pushed. There's no DMs. Uh, Comments get buried. There's no way to leave the platform. So in terms of as a business, like if I was an investor in TikTok, I would be so happy because you can't get people off the platform. That's
Right.
basically your platform's goal. I mean, that's YouTube's goal, that's Meta's goal, that's Snapchat and Elon's goal, and that's it's everybody's goal. So in that sense, they're crushing it. But from a creator standpoint, yeah, there's basically, I mean, unless you're like, again, I think it's actually quite similar to podcasting, where it's like on Instagram, you can be a top 50% creator and be doing pretty well. On TikTok, you have to be a top 0.1% creator for that to become like a real business or send people to other platforms or, have some or be able to build a product or sell a product. The one advantage I will point out though to, for TikTok, like we have a partnership with this company that does live sports card breaks on Hoops Nation's TikTok every day. And TikTok's in-app uh, product functionality, best in class, like better than Meta, better than YouTube, better than Twitter, better than everywhere. So I will give them credit for that. And people can make a lot of money with things like revenue splits on product sales and things. But
Yeah. Yeah,
every
the TikTok
platform.
shop is definitely a lot more successful than Instagram and the Facebook shops, where at least from the outside looking in, I know a lot more personal success stories on TikTok shop. And
Oh my
um,
God, there are people who are just crushing it on TikTok shop. It's great.
yeah, totally. So yeah, every platform is different, and different people can win on different platforms. But yeah, if I had to pick one, definitely YouTube.
And then I think there's an element of like the people who are really sharp, and I know that's you, and that's like people, and this is across all niches, but every once in a while opportunities come up, like snap shows, where if people jump on it, like those are real significant things. I think there's a similar opportunity right now with Instagram comments um, via ManyChat. I don't think it's going to last, but I think it's happening right now to where you can better direct an audience off platform to a product than ever before. There are people who are just crushing it with that. It's been helpful for our paid newsletter as well. And whether it's a Snapchat thing, or I'm trying to remember what the big one was before Snapchat. Um, it might have just been like being early on TikTok was basically like just a cheat code. Like 2019 TikTok, early 2020 TikTok was just crazy cheat code. But being on top of those trends, and I think the only way to do that is to sort of just like be in the game and just like be open to new things. I don't know if you have any like color on that or like how to find those new opportunities early, but
Yeah, I don't think there's a big secret. It's just like you live and breathe in this space in the community, and you develop those relationships, and people have these group chats, and they have like, I mean, it used to be Kick, right, and Telegram, and I think it's just you build a network of smart people, which like you learn about snap shows, right? Like I hear about the first amazing snap show kind of breakthrough opportunity. They're talking about how much money it is, and how easy it is to make this content, and blah blah blah. And then you start investigating, you dig in, and then you're like, oh shoot, like that's a real opportunity. And it ended up being like I probably heard from somebody who was also a very similar founder in our space, like probably like if I had to guess, like a Rap TV or something, or a Social Coaster or one of those companies, and they're talking about snap shows, and then I go and I get my first snap show, and then before you know it, I have 34 snap shows, because it becomes like, wow, I need to maximize this opportunity. I'm gonna keep pitching until they kick me off or say no, and so ends up being what catalyzes like the next phase of your company, right? So I think those opportunities are rare, but when they do come, I'm my biggest strategy and the biggest success I've had in life is just diving all the way in.
I love it. I think that's a great way to end it. You are the man. Keep crushing. Thank you so much for doing this. This is great.
Thanks for having me, man.
Sweet.